I love the gun combat in the Battlefield games. Some more seasoned FPS enjoyers might say that the gunplay is garbage, but for me it works perfectly. I enjoy playing with all of the weapons and figuring out which ones are my favourites. However, I've noticed an upsetting trend in 2042 and in games in general. Everyone is always on the hunt for the meta, and once they find it, that's all they'll play. But this style of playing always seemed super boring for me. From what I'm gathering from the Reddit, it's kinda boring for all of you too. So today I'm coming to tell you to reject the meta and embrace your favourites. There's always going to be one best gun and one best specialist, but isn't it way more fun to find your best gun and your best specialist? Moreover, don't you want to win and come out on top with an underdog loadout? Having your skills be constantly tested and improved because you're not resorting to the easy path? If not, then here's your cue to leave. I genuinely hope that you have fun running Mackay, VHX, G57, C5 all of the time. You can leave. Goodbye. Okay, now that all of the sweats have left, the real gamers can talk. Today I want to share with you some of my favourite off-meta guns. Weapons that work for me that I don't frequently see people using. I also want to know what weapons you guys like using. I'm always looking for something interesting to try out, so leave some of your off-meta loadouts in the comments. The Super 500 Shotty is my absolute go-to sidearm. When I'm looking for a sidearm, I'm usually only considering something which is useful up close, since if my target is far away, I typically just resort to reloading my primary. What better option for me than a shotgun? This 3-round secondary is capable of one-shotting infantry up close with a full shot to the chest or head, and it's perfect for turning the tides on infantry chasing you down, hoping to get that easy last hit, or whipping out once your primary is spent in order to clean up the dregs. Obviously you aren't going to be using this at far range, and missing your shots with this weapon hurts a lot, since loading the next round takes an exceptionally long amount of time in the heat of battle. But when you get to the point of consistently dropping people in one, you'll understand this love I have for this weapon. I rarely aim down sights with this and prefer hip firing with this thing, because I feel like the reticule allows me to more accurately determine where my shots are going to land. From the Reddit, I've heard a lot of people have a rough time with this weapon, accounting to it sometimes feeling inconsistent. Which sometimes it does, but I would say that 95% of the time my shots go exactly where I expect them. There's not much to equip here. I typically use the number 1 buckshot since I found these rounds get the job done well for me, and a red dot sight which, as I mentioned, I seldom use. Despite being far from its dominant form in Battlefield 4, the AAK-971 can absolutely melt people before they can even react, boasting a very high rate of fire. It's like having an SMG, but with the additional headshot multiplier that ARs come with. Its recoil on the first shot jumps quite significantly and can take some getting used to, making long range fights quite difficult. But once you're past that first bullet, your full auto recoil becomes very manageable. You'll be reloading this thing loads due to how many bullets you're spraying out. I definitely recommend running this with ammo crates if possible, or making sure that you pick up ammo packs dropped by dead enemies. Otherwise you'll find yourself running dry very quickly. In close and medium ranges this weapon absolutely slaps. I would strongly recommend trying it if you haven't already. My loadout includes the standard issue extended, which why would you not? The tactical compensator, which ups weapon accuracy at the cost of increased recoil. But since the recoil after the first bullet isn't that big of an issue, the increased accuracy is just a straight up benefit. The GP30 high explosive grenade launchers for the ability to deal with groups of enemies or to finish off weakened enemies behind cover. With the laser sight in backup, which you can use primarily if you find yourself hip firing more than you use the grenade launcher. For sights I typically run the Cobra sight with the Bravo 3X on reserve for those longer range engagements. I get it, burstfire weapons aren't the most appealing, but you owe it to yourself to try out the AC-42 if you haven't already. This weapon is a 3-round burst weapon with a very agreeable upward recoil. If you're someone who is aiming for the centre of mass often, you'll find yourself killing up close infantry in a single burst. Those first 2 shots will hit the chest and the last will hit them in the head, getting you an instant kill. It's crazy how little they can react to this weapon once you get the hang of it. Since the recoil is nicely vertical, with very little horizontal, this weapon is my favourite AR to use at long range. It's even pretty decent at hip firing due to its fast rate of fire. A great all-round weapon which, if you can get over the burst, I'm pretty sure you'll find to be very competitive. One last thing before we discuss loadouts, I know there was a brief period of the game where people would swear by this single shot mode. If that appeals to you, try that out too. I typically avoid it. My loadout includes the standard issue extended, the tactical compensator, or you could use the Arcom tactical muzzle brake, which increases vertical recoil control at the cost of horizontal recoil control, if you want to push this weapon to be a maximum long range beast. The LWG grip, which buffs accuracy while moving, which I'm typically always doing. The red dot sight with the 2.5 thermal scope as a backup for those longer range engagements. I hear Reddit upset about the weak state of SMGs all of the time, and apart from the two which you see on the battlefield somewhat commonly, the PP29 and the PBX45, I would mostly agree with them. Mostly. But when it comes to straight up close range combat, nothing is my go-to more than the AC9. This tiny little machine gun absolutely decimates the close range space in my opinion. Let me spell it out for you in 2042 terms. The AC9 is my redacted weapon. Sure, in long range engagements, you're mostly screwed. But if you're someone who likes to play close to the objective and or likes to run smoke in order to close the distance, then I would strongly recommend running this weapon. Hipfire all of the time. SMGs have a really low hipfire spread, so if you aren't exploiting your enhanced movement while not looking down sight, then you're not playing this weapon to its strength. Its recoil is really tight, and it has a very fast fire rate. Everything about it feels so snappy. I run it with support a lot, and I'm not sure if it's just their SMG proficiency or something else, but when I get a hold of this weapon I cannot be stopped. Well, of course, except by snipers. My loadout includes the close combat extended because I typically want to go all in on these close range engagements. A wrapped suppressor. I chose this because it keeps me off the minimap at ranges of 30 plus meters, so I can avoid these far engagements. It nerfs the projectile velocity, which is fine since I don't intend to take these far range fights. The STNR laser sight for hipfire accuracy while moving and recoil control, since I'm always moving and always using hipfire. For these close range weapons, I think you're mad if you don't consider using some sort of laser sight. And the Fusion Hollow, since it gives me a quick aim down sight speed. Let me set the scene. It's been a hard week, your boss is on your ass, your kids hate you, your old lady is done with your crap. You're tired, you just want to relax and play some Battlefield. You want to run something with very little effort, no recoil, just point and shoot. My friend, let me introduce you to the A91. This AR is my lazy mode weapon. Very little recoil means you can spray away at all of your targets, but it has the added benefit of being an AR and having the headshot multiplier. Its damage is nothing to write home about. It seemed to perform best at close to medium range, but since its recoil is so low, it's capable of letting you snag those longer range kills. I'll be 100% transparent, this weapon is far from the best weapon in the game, but damn, it's so easy, I love it. With it, I typically take the standard issue extended, the tactical compensator, a laser sight for those close range hipfire engagements, the M22 3.5x scope, which allows me to exploit the gun's very low recoil at range, and a Fusion Hollow for backup. As I said, this gun isn't the greatest damage at range, but the low recoil will mean that you can still get those further range kills. The 3.5 zoom means that I can also avoid scope glint, which seems to just attract snipers like crazy. So this list hasn't been in any particular order, but if I had to pick my favourite weapon, it has got to be the M60. This weapon is critically underrated in my opinion. It has a low rate of fire compared to the other LMGs, but as a trade-off it does very good damage, and its recoil bounces in such an easy to manage way. It's not uncommon to drop players in 4 rounds, and since you have 200 bullets to spare, feel free to go full Rambo and spray the hell out of anything that moves. Close to medium ranges work best, but you can just spray down long range targets with your massive box magazine, and if you're willing to bipod up, this is even easier. I think if you're holding the trigger on this weapon for more than 5 seconds, war screams are legally required. My loadout includes the standard issue extended for 200 rounds of fun, the tactical compensator because the increased accuracy is very relevant here. Since the recoil is so manageable, you don't have any reason not to take this. The bipod, which is fun if you can get into the habit of using it, but I get that this is a massive pain for some people. I wish DICE would just make deploying this automatic like it has been in every other Battlefield game. Alternatively, you could use the LWG grip for more accuracy while moving. For sights, I go with the Cobra and the Bravo 3X as a backup for longer range engagements. The Type 88 is another underrated LMG in my opinion. I think this is mainly a nostalgia pick for me, since I originally started using it since I commonly played with it a lot in previous iterations of the Battlefield series, but was happy to see that it translated over to Battlefield 2042 pretty well. It isn't anything particularly special, but the recoil is very manageable, and the weapon is surprisingly accurate for an LMG. Focusing on medium and close range targets is best, and only fighting those longer range engagements if you know you have some sort of positional advantage and the enemy doesn't have a sniper. My loadout includes the standard issue extended for more bullets, less problems. Again, the tactical compensator since the accuracy is more important and the recoil is very minor. A bipod if you use it on occasion, or the laser sight for the ability to hip fire an entire room to pieces. For scopes, the Cobra with the Bravo 3X for longer range engagements. Excluding the BSV-M, the SVK is the best DMR in the game. And I'm not sure why I don't see more people playing with it. It has a 2-shot kill up to a good long range, fires fast, and if you can control the vertical recoil, you can kill players faster than they can react. This is the perfect DMR. I implore you to try it out if you enjoy DMRs. I was confused when I was seeing people crying about the recent G428's power, when to me the SVK just straight up outperforms it and has been in the game since release. Granted, the SVK doesn't have a full auto mode, but you can still shoot it as fast as a G428. Moreover, this is one of only 4 weapons which have the AP underbarrel grenade launcher attachment, which can deal very good reliable damage to vehicles. Pairing this with the engineer class is a very good way to help you solo vehicles. My loadout typically involves the standard issue extended, the Arcom tactical muzzle brake which reduces horizontal recoil at the cost of vertical. Since you'll usually be fighting the horizontal recoil, this just makes more sense to me. The AP underbarrel for tearing through enemy armor. It got nerfed so you only have 2 rounds, but these 2 rounds can still do a lot of damage even to the heaviest of armor. It's a massive pain to unlock, but damn it's worth it. The 8R hollow sight with the M22 3.5 as a backup. Again, just avoiding that 4x plus scope glint can save you a lot of counter sniper deaths. Those are my picks. This list was all made in good fun. I'm definitely not going to police what weapons you should or shouldn't be using. I just personally think that meta isn't something that you should really care about too much. Especially if it's going to ruin your enjoyment of the game because you optimize the fun out of it. There's always going to be one best weapon, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's your best weapon. Try stuff out, explore, find what works for you. Let me know in the comments if there's a weapon and loadout which you run frequently which you think is underrated. I'm always looking for more weapons to try out. If you've enjoyed the video, throwing it a like and subscribing would be much appreciated. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day.
Ooh, they got a tank out finally.
Get it, Dan. I'm repairing you.
Ooh.